talked a lot about our respective journeys to coaching in the triangle. And yeah, and this year was like a really big year for both of us, like coaching high school ultimate, at least for me for the first time, which is something I always knew I wanted to do. But yeah, how did you end up making the transition from middle to high school, and how did it go in the fall?
So through that program that I was in with TU, um, was going to get placed at a high school. And what was funny is I live like 5 minutes from Jordan High School. So I was like, hey, like just plug me into the pre-existing great program where I can learn everything and then like be a part of that special thing. Um, and I would say, and again, thinking about the leadership piece, I didn't feel confident stepping into a head coach role necessarily, especially for a high school team. That just felt like something I was not ready for. Um, and I was wrong about that. I think that, that's always something that me, especially when I'm new to something, I will always doubt myself. It's a natural thing that I think everybody has those concerns about, especially if you really care about how you're going to go about um, being in a leadership position. But um, TU reached out and they're like, no, 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 no. You teach in Wake County, and we need a coach to be at Athens Drive High School. And I was thinking to myself initially when I got that message, I was like kind of really annoyed with it. I was like, what are you talking? Like, there's even a team there? Like, and I know saying this, like, my Athens players are probably going to be like, coach, you do like what? Like you thought that, but I seriously just didn't know what it looked like. And then I was talking to Michael about it, and he was like, hey, like they've got a squad. Like I didn't know this, but I know that Athens finished second at states the previous season. And I think the season before that, they also finished second. So there had been this run of success from this team. And the only reason I didn't know about them was because, unlike Jordan High School, unlike Chuff, unlike East, this team had not gone to tournaments outside of North Carolina. They had competed at states, they had competed at local tournaments, and that was about it. And, you know, I was, again, kind of hesitant at the time. What was interesting was, um, this whole kind of feeling out the team and figuring out, okay, what are these players like? They're also, that was reflected towards me as a coach. They're also trying to figure me out at the same time. I remember going to um, high school kickoff down at like Herndon Park, and I met, that's where I met Willem Boshoff, who was one of the captains of the team. I met his dad, Al, who helped us out a ton this season just with logistics and organizing the parents on the team. And I met a bunch of other players who were going to compete. I met Drew Grinnell, who was huge for us. I met Assad Pathan. Basically, all of the big contributors from who were going to be consistent in positions of leadership. Bryce Jensen was there. I remember Jonathan Taylor was there. They're all kind of playing in these like mini games. And I remember going out and like watching the play, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. These guys are really athletic and they're really good throwers, especially Willem. Jonathan was just running around, not getting tired at all, skying people. Assad is a very creative thrower. Bryce just has the stamina of an athlete who runs cross country, runs track. And, I was looking at all these players. I was like, wow, if this is the five that I'm seeing now, that sets a really high ceiling for what this team can do. But I remember when I met Willem, like he's asking, like it's basically kind of we're kind of figuring each other out. He was like, okay, like what experience do you have coaching? And I was like, well, not a lot. Like I was like very upfront with him. I was like, not a lot of experience coaching. I've coached middle school. This is a big step up for me. Um, what I do have a lot of experience, and this was something that I had always kind of kept in my back pocket, but filming all those teams I had filmed over the previous, at that point, I mean, 9 years, um, had put me in around coaches like Mike Denardis, like Jesse Jones. It had put me around high performing teams that were dealing with high pressure situations. I think as somebody who wanted to coach in those younger years, something that one of the things I was doing aside from filming and enjoying that was thinking about, okay, here's how this coach handled this situation. Here's how this situation happened on the field. How would I have handled that situation? Here's what they're running. How would I run that? Trying to put myself into their shoes and understand what they were trying to communicate. How are they handling personalities, especially on ring? Like plenty of big personalities on that team in the last 10 years. And I think that helped me navigate how to handle a team like Athens. We had a lot of great athletes on that team. And when I say a lot of great athletes, I mean we had a guy, Ian Stutz. He goes to Enloe. He's going to NC State to swim on scholarship. He is one of the best swimmers, not just in North Carolina, but in the United States. And this was a constant refrain. Like we would like anytime we would do something cool on the field, we like some like we'd have some player would shout like something like, "Oh, that's an Olympic swimmer," and it's like kind of close to it actually. So, that just was indicative of what our talent level was like. And with that in hand, it was then really simple for me to figure out, okay, well then how are we going to build in systems that are going to work for this team? I think the biggest challenge was figuring out how to make us play to a high ceiling. When you have a lot of athletes and you've got great throwers, the natural inclination in youth is throw the ball deep. Throw the ball deep. Keep doing that and it'll work and we'll score at least, 3 or 4 times in a game on a deep shot. Um, one of the challenges for me as a coach, especially in the fall, was figuring out, okay, teams know this about us. They're not going to play man against us all the time. We played against Carborough, I think it was 3 times in the fall. They beat us on Universe. It was one of our first outings together as a team. It was like one of these single game formats that we played. Um, Great learning experience because it was a situation where we had the ball to score. Um, Played them again at Fall Brawl, beat them by a bigger margin than you know, like it was I think I felt comfortable at the end of that game, but getting through that game was a real challenge because they played zone the whole time. And again, you have all these creative throwers. They want to try and throw something that gets you over the zone. And my whole thing was, look, we have 4 or 5 throwers on this team who are all very capable. We don't need to be throwing aggressively against this zone. They want us to do that. And then, we saw them again at States, same thing. How do we handle this team that we're constantly seeing? I would say something about the fall that really um, stuck with me was all the lessons that you learn in that process. It's kind of weird that States happens in November, so you only get like 3 months with your team before, all right, we're at the big high performance, high pressure tournament where we need to play well. And um, I the way I handled that was just trying to treat it as for myself. And I speak for myself, not so much for the team, because I wanted the team to just go out and perform well, and I know they wanted that for themselves. So I was like, let me take on that mantle as a coach of let me get the best I can out of these players and inspire them to do that. For myself personally, it was let me also internalize some of the lessons here. How do you deal with poaches? How do you get a team to play more conservative when it's windy? You've got a lot of zone being played against you. And also, how do you fit different players into your system? Perfect example of this, Ben Boshoff, great downfield player. I had him back as a handler for some of our games in the fall. And what I learned from that experience was this guy can get open, especially on resets. He's great for that to get the ball moving. Use him there and use him downfield. Use him as a defender on the other team's best player who they want to score deep. Don't have him handle as much. We've got other great players. We've got Willem, we've got Assad, we've got Drew. They can handle that throwing load much better. And so, all of those pieces kind of fit together really well for us. One of our challenges as well was we only had one practice every week. So we were practicing on Sundays, and the reason for that was like our guys were playing other sports. Like we had guys playing football, we had guys who were running cross country. We like Jonathan Taylor literally came to fall brawl middle of Saturday. We had 11 players. He shows up in the middle of our game against CFS, and like we were already starting to show fatigue. And I was like, "Oh, perfect, Jonathan, go out and score." Um, and he like he goes out and skies a guy, rolls his ankle, but came down with the disc, and then like gets his ankle taped up and played the rest of
Oh
the
my
tournament.
God.
It was crazy, and I was like, it was just and so that was kind of our situation, was just like, let's use the time that we do have. I remember in November is always kind of a weird month because as a teacher you have all these teacher work days, and so I was like, hey, let's find every single day that we can where we can get an extra practice in. I think the first week of November we had a teacher work day on Halloween. We had our Sunday practice. Monday we had school. Tuesday we had a work day, and I was like, let's go. And or maybe we had Monday off. I don't remember, but Tuesday we definitely had a teacher work day because it was election day. And I was like, hey, let's go practice. Have a 9 a.m. practice in the morning. The guys loved it. Same thing on Veterans Day. And so right before states, basically between fall brawl and states, we were able to take our lessons from fall brawl. Great talented team. We're kind of inconsistent, especially in high pressure games, and nailed down especially our offensive systems. That's where we had the most growth to do. Came into states. We had a crazy kind of pool play situation. We ended up in a pool with East, and they were the higher seed because they had won at fall brawl. And we had a morning game against CFS, which was great for us. That was a team that we felt very confident against because we had a lot more seniors than them. Um, had a great game against them, started off our day on the right foot. Then we had a bye. And so we were able to go scout East during that bye round. And we were just sitting on the sideline getting a sense of, okay, who's who. Came out and beat them very handily, like 9-6. I mean, I think that they hadn't played us yet. They didn't understand, and they adjusted really well later that weekend. They didn't really understand, I think, in that game that we want you to play our game, which is to shoot the ball deep so that our athletes can go out there and eat that stuff up. I think that they got flustered by that and could not really course correct and get themselves back in that game. Um, and then we tried opening up lines against Hoggard, but I did it in a way that was not very effective. And we had like 2 20-minute points where it was just absolutely brutal and we could not score. And like, I remember Willem looking at me and he's like, Coach, we got to change this. like, like this was a good idea. We're not doing it well. Like we were gassing ourselves. And we tightened up lines, finished that game off handily, and then we went, like, our last game was, I think, on Saturday was our toughest, and we went down, I think, 4-0 to Charlotte, and it was a situation where receivers were not catching the disc, like we were starting to get drops, and I think it was just a fatigue thing. um Fourth game on Saturday, late game. Charlotte really wanted it. They were also playing 2-3-2 against us, which was a zone we hadn't seen before, and so we had to adjust. They started on defense, get all those breaks. Our team was like, I remember how flustered we were. And like, I was just thinking in my head, I was like, just get us on the other side of this game. Just get us in a situation where they have to receive, because then they got to play offense against us. And I was like, just get us to that second half. And I think it was like either 4-0 or 4-1 I think it was like 4-1 in the first, at the end of the first half. It went to half cap. um, and I was like, okay, brand new ball game. Let's get out here and go go do this thing. And I think we ended that game. I don't know if it was like 6-5 or 7-5 or something like that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure we won it on Universe. And I remember as that was happening, Drew is like walking up to the line, and he handled. I had him take on a big role as a handler to take some of the throwing load off of Willem, who I wanted to keep as fresh as I could for Sunday. And I remember Drew and I were walking up, and like as this comeback is happening, he like just like we were like walking next to each other. He's like, Coach, high school ultimate is crazy, and I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, it is. And so that game was just that was I think was one of my proudest moments. Is I think even of the whole season, just seeing the resilience of our team and especially the mental resilience of okay, we went down, but we can do this. We've got this. Um, Came out on Sunday, had a very easy path to the final. I think in the final, what really brought us down was our fatigue. I don't think that we managed legs as well as we did in the spring, and I think that was something a big learning experience. We had a lot of offensive struggles against East. They played a much tighter game. I remember that they were hitting a lot more of like the inside breaks, trying to move the field over. We had a lot of trouble stopping that on the mark. Um, but we still were able to tie it late in the second half. It was like 9-9, and I was like, oh, like can we pull this off? And I think we had one timeout left that I think mistakenly saved for the situation where I was thinking, okay, we'll get a turnover, then we'll use that T on when we had to have the D line out there. What I should have done was when it was tied 9-9, we had a couple of opportunities to score. I should have had us call it then, I think, because we needed to score just that one. So it wasn't, we didn't, I think we all wanted to win states. What was in the back of my mind the whole time was if we finish first or second, we can go to EULA. We can go to these big spring tournaments and get invites and compete for high school national invite if we want to. And so when we got through the semis game against Carver, I was like, I mean, basically at this point, it's just a matter of this last game and do we want this for ourselves and what is our like mental and physical conditioning at this point. Um, I think that East was deeper at the end of the fall than we were, just in terms of their skill. I think there were a lot of players who we were still developing. And I feel bad about not having prioritized that. I think that's one thing I would change. This, like, if one of the big lessons from that time was like, let's take what we learned from then and develop rookies better. And it was hard because we had so many seniors for newer players to even get the playing time that they wanted to have. And that was a challenge even that we addressed more in the spring. It's just hard in the fall when you only have 3 months. But even then I was like, okay, well maybe we could have had more practices, right? Like so those were kind of some of the big takeaways. Um and there were a lot of other stuff that we um, started to work on after states. We definitely got a lot of negative feedback about our sideline presence, and I think that it was warranted. I just had never had a sit down conversation with the parents about here are the do's and don'ts of being on a frisbee sideline. They were treating it like there were refs who were handling the situations on the field, and I was like, we should have had that conversation.
I can see how that might be problematic.
Yeah. We had that happen. We had players who were very chirpy, and who were saying things that, you just can't say on an ultimate field to other players. And it did lead to a lot of really just, I think, negative experiences from teams playing us. And I think the challenge there is when you're a team, and especially a high school team, that's really good and you're beating other teams pretty handily. I mean, there were like I think there were three other teams I would say that were like it was like us, Jordan, Chuff, and East Chapel Hill who were pretty even with each other. CFS absolutely capable of giving us a bad day, certainly did at Queen City, but like it was a very clear, okay, here are these top four. If you're playing against one of those top four, that's not a generally great experience for your confidence and your pride when they're beating you. But then on to layer on top of that those negative experiences. And I talked about this with Christoph, who was our other coach, and he helped me understand why we acted the way we acted, especially with regards to calls. One of the things I didn't know but Christoph kind of illuminated for me over a course of like the spring was I think 2 seasons ago, in the first time that Athens made or had a chance to go to finals or even a chance to win states, there had been a call situation, a team that they were playing against. It might have been East. I'm not. I think that was the case, and it was a situation where the score had happened. a call was made after the score had happened, after the team was celebrating, the disc went back, and then the team got scored on. I think from that point on, our players really internalized, we're not going to play that way, but we're also going to swing. But I think they also kind of, being younger players, swung the pendulum fully the other way of like, we're not going to make travel calls. We're just not going to make calls. We're just going to play the game and let the game kind of reflect our athleticism, our success. But I think that it also led to situations of not knowing how to handle yourself when a call happens. And that was something that we definitely had to fix going into the spring. So it felt good to come out of that, especially as my first coach, like hurrah, coaching that team. I think that there was a lot of that, it was interesting walking away from that. And I think this is a very normal feeling that every coach has to condition themselves to understand is you can walk away from the results of a season, especially like the season we had in the fall, and be really happy with the outcome. And then through a series of conversations or self-reflection, recognize, that was good, but there were some underlying things that are not okay if you don't do something about them. And one of those things was we needed to have conversations about how do we handle call discussions? How do we handle the rules? Um, there's an, the way that we went about that was really interesting because I realized I was like, you can't just hand off the rule book to players and say, hey, go read this. I think like adults don't even do that. so
No, they do not.
so
No, they do not.
so I was like, basically what I did was late, like right before Queen City, I sat down with the team and just was like, hey, I want to read the section that deals with spirit of the game. And as we go through this, list out the things I think we do well, list out the things I think we could improve on. Section 2 of the rule book, I think, is like the most illuminating piece of it because it's section 2D, which lays out that players have a responsibility to make calls specifically when the infraction affects the outcome of an interaction or point. And this is one of the things I was like, okay, now think about this. How many times have you seen players, especially in like youth, call travels at like right at the end of a game, like it's universe point that they hadn't previously been calling, right? And why doesn't that happen at the adult level, or why does it, right?
It does.
It does. So I was like, hold on a second. Section 2D of the rule book here is saying this, and here's how other teams interpret the rules. Some of them are big sticklers for it. They're going to call everything because they believe that's how the game should be played. What is our interpretation of this going to be? What are the things we do well? The two things I thought we could improve on were just like our general attitude towards our opponents and then our body language. Those two things, once we flip those, totally different ball game. And a couple of mea culpas from myself and the other coaches towards other coaches, I think went a long way, especially like when we were at Youth Cup. Like there was one or two teams where I like went up to the other coach and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry for what happened in the fall. We're not going to do that. Please let me know if there's anything that we can do in this game that we're not doing. And I think once we opened that door, it became very easy to not just like come off as a team that is competitive and spirited, but also come off as a team that like um for ourselves wasn't even thinking about what had happened in the past anymore. It didn't even matter. It was like, okay, we can just focus on performance because that's what we want to focus on. And once we got ourselves out of the way, if you compare the scores like of the teams that we played in this area from the spring and compare those to the score lines in the fall, there's a vast difference. Like at Youth Cup, the only team that scored more than 5 on us was the team we lost to. It was Chuff of all teams. Which the irony
Yeah,
of
it
that for me was
was.
not lost on me. Um, but like once I was able to compare those results, I was like, man, like this stuff really does work, and it's not that hard to fix. And what I think was really effective um, about making that transition, and I actually would like to see this more from USAU and from other organizers, and this is just like something I would throw out there. I made that course change, and that our team made that course change because we were told by Triangle Ultimate that if this continued, you're not going to play in future tournaments. I think it would actually be really interesting if organizers took it upon themselves to review spirit scores from and like feedback from teams that compete at their tournaments. And if you score less than a 10, tell that team, hey, this was the feedback you got, fix this. If you're average now, like not every game you're going to get it, you're not like there's such like I played it when we played at Eula, there were situations where I was like, okay, this was a situation where we had a contested situation and the other team interpreted that as we don't like these guys. That's fair. But when your average score is like below what it should be, I think that there is room, and I think this is true even at the adult level. In some situations, I understand at nationals that's a very different conversation, and I understand that that is very complicated. I think that especially at the youth and the college level, how many times have you seen situations with teams where they have a history of, oh, there's this one player on our team who always does this kind of stuff, and I'm like, well, sure, but you already knew about that one player who always does that stuff, and nothing has changed.
There was that Reddit post from U24s calling that like one player the softest person alive that got like 300 upvotes or whatever. Like, yeah. I do like, I think that's a really interesting idea. And like, my pushback and my like known out there feedback for all you breaksiders out there, is like, especially at youth, I think we need either refs or observers. Like, I think you need a third party. Like, and I think that it will be healthier for the sport in the long run if we could get a third party. And I understand this is not feasible right now. It's not even a little feasible right now.
It's funny that you bring this up though, because once TU started hearing, hey, this team is acting in a particular way, and we've had these negative experiences, there were TU people watching the games that we were in, saying, hey, this is what we saw. And I think
Look at that problem solving. Third party observers work. It works.
And like, I mean, I was at the middle school tournament, very contested final game in the mixed division. I mean, it was kind of crazy. I remember watching that and spectating that, and I was standing next to one of the TU people who was helping police the sideline, and I was like, that's actually something that I think is totally acceptable. Like, I mean, I've been told as a camera operator by USA Ultimate people that I can't cross a particular line, right? Like, I think that just and communicating that, especially with like parents who might not understand, or because then that gives a parent the chance to open the door of, hey, well, the reason I'm doing is because I see people over there who are doing it. Maybe you should go talk to them as well. And I think that's totally fine. If you're able to have a dialogue about that, I think that leads to long term the standards and the expectations that you want to have at those kinds of events. And it helps coaches like myself, especially newer coaches who might have, you always have a perception of yourself in a particular role, and then that meets with reality. I think that when you have that standard set and it's set early, that's something that's going to be remembered, or nothing changes and then there are requisite consequences for that. So, um, all of that was stuff that like I took to heart, especially once we went into the spring. Um, so it was an incredible run, and what I really loved about all that was then that it set us up to have the spring season that we had. Um, and speaking of the spring, you also had a pretty interesting, like, kind of transition away from youth rec into high school. Tell me about how that all went down with Jordan girls, and what the progression there of your season was like.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is all down to Mr. Michael Avila, who is, the architect of, the Jordan High School program and turning it into what it is now today, which is, at least in my opinion, a like actual like shining example for like what a youth program and a high school program can be. But when I finished up sort of a lot of my summer coaching, I realized like I was a little bit more interested in coaching high schoolers. A lot of that is because so much of my formative experience, both positive and negative with coaching, happened in high school. Um, and yeah, like just so much of my sort of core relationship to the sport was built during that time. And so I reached out to Chuff. I reached out to Triangle Ultimate about potentially reviving Chapel High School Ember, the girls team, which was struggling for numbers and didn't play a season ago, sort of as Ultimate returned from its COVID-19 hiatus. Ultimately, it didn't look like they had the numbers in the fall, so I ended up taking kind of the fall off. And but I'd seen Mike around. I told him I was interested in coaching again. He and I like kind of go way back. He coached against me for many years. I like just missed him coaching me at YCCs for a year. And he was sort of very instrumental in helping Chuff through a difficult period despite coaching Jordan. Or at least to me, it felt like he was very instrumental and very supportive. So I'll always owe him a debt of gratitude for that at the bare minimum. But I think come December of last year, 2024, Mike mentioned to me that he was looking for somebody to help out with the girls team at Jordan in the spring. And he asked sort of like what my commitments were and like if I thought it was feasible and all of that sort of thing. And I was really excited because I'd wanted to coach high school girls in the fall. That had fallen through. Mike is someone who I really admire and look up to as a coach. And so getting to work with him was really exciting to me. And also, I'm a deeply competitive person, and part of his pitch was like, this is an incredible team that, won EULA last year and really, really, really wants to go to HSNI this year. And, he was like, there are some big personalities on this team. Like it's an intense bunch. It's a group that really wants to win, but that's really talented. Like, do you think you can handle that? And I was like, the teams I played on. Like, I think we can definitely handle it.
Did that team did Jordan this year have a lot of upperclassmen, or what was kind of the makeup of the team that you had?
It was a really interesting mix. We had 4 seniors, 2 of whom, Caroline DeWolf and Elise Hetland, played U20 Worlds a summer or 2 prior. And so we had 4 seniors, like only a couple of juniors and a lot of young talent. And I think like that sort of tracks with the player dynamics that the Triangles had with Girls Ultimate recently. Like I think the graduating class and class below it were sort of really affected by COVID, but there is like a huge number of girls who are playing, U17 Kitty Hawks this year, and who are really talented, who got 3rd place last year, and who are returning a huge group this year, and will probably be one of the best teams in the U17 girls division this year as well. So we had our 4 seniors, and just this like really talented young team, and I think we ran into perhaps some similar issues that you mentioned with Athens, right? We have a lot of people who want to play different sports, and Jordan does a really phenomenal job of accommodating them and like telling them, we want you to prioritize these other sports. Actually, like we don't want Ultimate to be your entire life. And I think that's hard because for some kids, Ultimate is their entire life. Like they don't have these other sports. They don't want these other sports. Like They know what they want. They love what they have. And that was certainly me. Like, there were a few weeks on Chuff when we were like fully in charge, and we were like, what if we practice 4 times a week? Like, we're all doing this. Like, we're all this kind of intense kid who like does this, and like this is what we do. And also, we have these kids who are, playing on their soccer teams and running and doing all these things. And also because of the dynamics, right? Like we're not able to field a team that is exclusively from Jordan, right? Like we have to pick up some of these other girls who don't have teams at their schools. And so, our numbers are low regardless of whether or not people are playing sports or not. And it can be really difficult to kind of manage, everyone's own individual situation and coming in. And that's like part of why I was so like grateful to like work with Mike, because I was again sort of the opposite of you, like in my sort of like gung ho like nature. I was like, I could head coach. Like I could totally do this.
The benefits of being a younger coach and like
exactly
no inhibitions whatsoever.
And then coming in and like seeing how much he does for the program, like how he manages, every single player's sort of unique situation. And he's done this both on the boys and girls side forever. He was sort of more focused on the girls this year. But just how he manages the parents, each kid, like all of the logistics and like, utilizing the resources that the parents have to like do things for the team, like get fields, like, make sure everyone has rides, make sure hotels are figured out for these travel, like all of that. I was like, oh my God, like this is so overwhelming. And all I have to do is hear about it from you. And all I have to do is show up and like coach these kids and like get like all I was doing in the beginning too was like giving individual feedback, because I think like a big like a what was sort of a source of discomfort for me coming into a coaching situation was being like, oh, like, yeah, I grew up in the triangle and I grew up playing like triangle ultimate in kind of every sense of that word. But I left. Like I went to New England for 4 years.
Right.
I was not playing the ultimate that has sort of, for better and for worse, got its little roots in like every single program here, it feels like, right? Like I was outside of that sort of tree and that base of knowledge. And, Mike mentioned, that's something he appreciates. Like he really, really values these outside perspectives. And still, right, like coming into a program like Jordan, there are, I think every single player, because I was coming in the spring, right? Like every single player other than like one or two like brand new girls we picked up had a better sense of like, how do we play ultimate at Jordan than I did.
Right.
And so I think for the first few weeks, at least, like I felt like I was playing catch up. Like I was definitely nervous whenever I was taking the lead on explaining certain things. And, like it was already an accomplished group that like largely, they'd like won EULA last year. Like they'd done all of these things. And, stepping in as a like full outsider. And even to this point, like still feeling like kind of an outsider to Triangle Ultimate. Was definitely a challenge at times. But, again, like I could say nice things about Mike Avila on camera for a very long time. But yeah, like I think Mike over and over, like made me feel valued and like reminded me that he valued my perspective and like what I brought to the team. And it was a like privilege to like get to be a part of a group that wanted to win so badly and like wanted it so badly. And I think a lot of our challenges this season definitely came from like managing that and kind of managing, okay, like we know we are good because this is the same core that like won a regional tournament last year. Like we know that we are good. Like how do you get everyone on the same page that like, yes, we are good, but no, we are still not good enough. Like we need to, be invested in this process in our growth. And like we need to sort of, while our goals are all very results based, how do we sort of put that out of our mind and focus on our process that we know will give us good results? And I think a lot of that also stemmed from They won EULA last year, which was a qualifying tournament for HSNI. And if you go back and look at the record, you will see they did not play at HSNI last year. And they sort of found out during and sort of immediately following the EULA final that, like, because there were like a certain amount of pickups and because the team wasn't a certain like Jordan percentage, that they like weren't going to be allowed to compete last year. So last year they had sort of thought that they had done everything and that they had, like, Jordan didn't have a girls program when I was
so hard.
Yeah, they did not have a girls program like when I was in high school. And sort of on the backs of some incredible players and like years of work, they've built this team into something that can go compete. And because of, the way the pandemic impacted playing here as a girls division player, right? Like, they're not able to like field a full team from their school. And, they do all this work, they put all this time into it, and then it's sort of like ripped away. And, you know, I'm not even sure I realized fully until now, even, like, like, just how much that informed this year and that how much that informed the feelings about it. And I think, by all measures of success, we had a successful season. Second at EULA, ninth in the country at HSNI, which, by the way, we ended up placing better than the other teams that qualified for HSNI who were at EULA. So, like, we ended up being the best team that placed at HSNI out of that tournament. But, I think they wanted it so bad. Like, they wanted to win EULA again. Like, we didn't, because we ran into a team that was very experienced playing a zone. And, like I mentioned earlier, we had
windy.
It is so windy. It's so windy there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But also, like, we hadn't really had the numbers to practice a zone. Like, the way that we were able to practice a zone for HSNI and get reps is we pulled the boys team out. Like, after their season was basically done, we were like, hey, like, the girls team needs some help. Like, practice is happening. You all are invited to practice. You understand that, like, if you are at practice, the focus will be on the reps that you're giving the girls team. And there were multiple days where these high school boys showed out for their girls team and, ran in a cup for 90 minutes, which, is an unbelievable ask of these kids who also, by the way, are coming from the most successful boys program of the past half decade in the Triangle, have gone to nationals like 5 times over the last like 6 or 7 years. And, were really injured this year, had a down year competing on sort of the regional national stage and didn't qualify. And so their expectations for the season were sort of gone, and they still showed up and did it anyway, which is like again, another like huge testament to like what has been built at Jordan.
Yeah,
but
such an incredible culture, and I think you talk we've talked about the name Michael Avila comes up a lot in these conversations, but I mean, I truly think that it is special to see. He we were texting each other the other night. He was like, people say that it's special, it's really not, and I was like, yeah, to some degree it's not, because at the end of the day, I think in his shoes, it's like, well, how hard is it really to do all of these little things the right way? And actually, it is pretty hard, because when you look at the like you were mentioning, like dealing with figuring out hotels, figuring out logistics, getting everyone on the same page, figuring out how to manage a team that has such high hopes and expectations and is having to do basically the same thing they did from the previous season all over again, with the same expectation of we're going to get those outcomes. I mean, there are, I remember playing in college. We had aspirations to go to nationals all 4 seasons I was there. We went 1 year, which was the last year that I played. We did not hold it. Like, there were moments throughout those 4 years where we as older players, not so far out of high school, but as older people, did not handle those ups and downs nearly as well as what you see coming out of a program like Jordan. And I think, that says a lot about what is there.
Yeah, and it's definitely not to say that like there were not ups and downs. Like I think like for some of our players and coaches included, absolutely. Like losing Eula was just crushing
Yeah.
because it was we'd won last year. This was the only feasible tournament to go to in the spring. Like
Right.
Eula was it. It was the only thing we could put on tape out there. It was the only like showcase we could do.
Right.
And if we had won all our games, we were in and we control our own destiny, and we didn't do it. And like it was a brutal drive home. It was a brutal
Yeah.
Next few days, next few weeks, because you're at the whims of a selection committee for that, for going to nationals. And yes, like we want to know and we want to go, but also we have to know too, because again, we have no other tournaments that we can go to. There was a chance, like if things had like gone out of hand, if we like got blown away and like we weren't like, and if we had been deemed like, oh, like you're not nationals worthy, like we're knocking you out of the top 25 rankings or whatever, after that, like the season would have been over. Right? Because what are you gonna say to this group of players that are really competitive, that are playing other sports, right? Like, we don't have anything else for you. Like, sorry, like we can keep practicing, but like for what?
Right.
Right? And I think like you would be hard pressed to have anybody be excited to do that at any level, right? Like if your competitive season is over,
you gotta let it go.
You gotta let it go. And
Which
so
is hard still to do.
Which is still really hard to do. But
Yeah.
and so there were times where there were a few weeks where it just like it seemed fully up in the air and we had like no idea what was happening.
It's so fascinating that you say that, because when y'all finished second, I was like, they're gonna go. Like that's so funny to me that this was, but again, it speaks to you. It's out of your hands.
It's out of your hands. And to be honest, like I think between me and Mike and between me and the entire team, I think I was probably more confident than like anyone
that
else.
Makes a lot of sense.
And it's like it had been like 2 months of me on the team. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're fine, guys. Like, I think we're fine.
That is so tough, man. I mean, and gosh, and again, it's not like in college, you play for the bids.
Yeah, there's like
you earn the bid.
You can see the math happening in front of you. Like you can understand what's going on. You can see it all. And in high school, like there's not the resources for that. It's run through Ultiworld. It's not run through, USAU. How much time does anybody and like at Ultiworld even have to like dedicate specifically to like high school ultimate when there's every other part of the calendar going, so it does feel out of your hands. And I think again, like I was not a player or coach who had gone through this program and built this team into this really incredible, deep, talented group of girls players that they had, right? Like I was 2 months in and I was like, guys, I think we're chilling. And for me, it was like yes, in 2 months, I had already like developed a deep love of the program and of the players. But it's not the same as like having been in on the ground floor like they were. And like, yes, I intellectually understood that there was a possibility that our season was over. But it didn't. There's no way it could have possibly felt the same for me as it did for those players or for Mike even, because, just putting myself in their shoes. Right, you spend 4 years doing this. You're like, okay, this is what I have to do. I know what I have to do. I know what I have to execute. Maybe I'm heaping an unbelievable amount of pressure onto myself, but I'm an incredible player. This is an incredible team. Like, we've done this at every step of the way. We've done this. Like, I don't think they'd really lost much
Yeah.
at all
Yeah.
as a team until that game, that final against Strathaven in
Right.
Eula. And then all of a sudden, like, you lose, like, your sense of inevitability and invincibility around the team is
Yeah.
gone.
It's out of your
Your
control.
fate is out of your control, and you're just sitting there like, there are a million things I wish I could have done differently.
Right.
Or I wish we had done differently. Or you had done, even if you want to play the blame game, right? Because you're in a bad headspace, right? Like,
Gosh.
it's all normal and it all makes sense. And still, looking back, it's like, okay, we got second in Eula. Sure, there are, maybe 12 out of 16. I think it was actually like 11 out of 16 teams. Well, over half the teams at HSNI are West Coast teams, sure, right? Like the West Coast girls team, especially, is seen as better, but it's not. They're not going to invite one team from the East Coast, right? They're not going to do that. But still, you don't know. You can't know.
Right.
And am I going to sit here and be like, well, actually, as a high school player, like, I build. No, I was the same. I was the same way. I wanted to win just as badly.
Right.
Every single loss was just as crushing. And I think, like, being forced to be in a situation to try to help, and in a lot of ways where you can't, and like sometimes these are just like lessons that like they have to learn.
Right.
And like they have to learn how to handle this. Like, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
But it is meaningful to see the growth from like that game until how we performed at HSNI.
Yeah. Something that I remind myself in those situations, and I found myself in that position at Youth Cup because I really did think that we could have beaten Chuff. I think that we were up 3 on them, 8-5, and you lose 9-8. And I'm like, we received 3 of those points. I've seen the tape. And, the thing that I remind myself, especially true of this, if I think I would feel less of this way if I was in like a community like Charlotte or Asheville, or if I was in, like Indiana. I remember this great Indiana high school. Gosh, I forgot what they were called, but the first HSNI, it was Cedar
Grove or something.
Center,
Yeah.
or Center Grove.
Center Grove.
Center
Yes.
Grove. They made the final. And no, they didn't make the final. They were in the semis, and they ran into John Randolph. They ran into John Randolph, and
unfortunate.
I was like, oh,
happens
gosh.
to the best of us.
Happens to the best of us. And they went down in that semis game, and then played it back to Universe. They forced Universe point against that Seattle team that they were playing against. And that Seattle team, I think, had like 7 guys on it. I mean, I remember I interviewed John Randolph after that game was over, or not after that game, but after the final was over, which his team had lost. And he's just like, sweat is just like I don't know how. I don't think that the human body could contain so much water until I interviewed him after that game. Like, we're in Rockford, and it's like 80 degrees, and there's like this poor guy. I was like, dang, man, like you really did put this team in your back a little bit. It was just an incredible group of players. I don't know if Hecht was on that team. I don't know if he was an East Coast or West Coast guy, but there were some outstanding players. But with like Center Grove, that it isn't a situation where when you graduate, you're going to go off to university and be successful. It's tough when I think it would be harder knowing like, okay, this is it for a lot of these high school players. It was, I think, with your Jordan team and with Athens, knowing that some of these players are going to go and compete in college and going to compete, like, especially with our guys a lot of them are going to Alpha. And I think we have 3. We've got a couple of guys going to UNC. I'm like, this experience that they had in this season is going to be super important when they go and they know, hey, wait a second, you can be super talented and the other team has a say. You can do all the things right, and something happens that takes that away. Knowing how to navigate that at such a young age, yes, it's hard. At the same time, it's such a valuable thing when you go into those college programs, because how many times do you see at the college level situations come up? You have an outstanding regular season. You get to the postseason, and it's windy at nationals on the first day. You have a bad pool play. You end up in pre-quarters, and then you have to
Mm-hmm.
face the reality of, wow, our dreams really are on the line right now.
Mm-hmm.
Your team admin screws up, and there's a guy who was rostered who shouldn't have been on the team when you played in the spring, and now you have 48 hours to fix your roster before USA Ultimate nullifies all the results, right? Like those situations, I especially here, I think are valuable, and it's something that I took to heart. I think as a result of the feedback I got from TU on our culture was like, hey, there's a bigger picture that you are playing for here. Like, yes, it is in the moment, but ultimately what we're doing is also shaping these players to then go on. And I think once I squared with myself with that, it became a lot easier in the spring for me to accept those moments when we underperformed, or we had a bad game, or I made a bad coaching call, because I also recognize then, hey, first off, it's just me and Christoph and Al, and sometimes, a parent or two comes out and helps out, and we're all just figuring this thing out together as we go along. What I really appreciated from our guys was the ability to just, on some level, I feel like, accept that, because I think that, especially on Athens, what I was really proud of culture wise was our ability to create these meaningful core experiences off the field. Going up to Eula together and staying in an Airbnb where it was like most of the team is there, most of the parents are there. We're waking up and throwing together like at 9 a.m. on Saturday because our game is in until noon, getting to go to the Washington Mall together, getting to have those core memories. We that's really what it's about, and it's lost on you when you're younger sometimes. What I was really proud of was it wasn't lost on a lot of our guys, or at least that's something that I thought that was, at least was communicated. Maybe I'm only speaking for Willem because he was the one who vocalized that, but when I think about that, I'm like, dang, like that this really is what it's about. If players can go and have those incredible experiences, and then also have the special nature of, we got to compete for some big things, and maybe even in the case of get to go to HSNI, which is something that's still, like, especially for Athens, is still a goal the program has, even though how we get there is going to be a long, I think, and it's going to take a lot of building over the next couple of years to get ourselves in a position to get to that point. Um, I think that's so special. I think that's an incredible thing that players get to have.
Yeah, I think it only really fully clicked for us at Jordan, like as HSNI was wrapping up. But I think the mindset that we had like at HSNI was like miles ahead of where it was at Eula. So I think there was a lot more like gratitude and appreciation for the moment. I know like I really tried to remind them the last few weeks we had together in practice, like, hey, you know, everyone else in this area, they're not, they're only focusing on YCC. Like, they're done with their high school time together. Their teams are done for the season. Like, it is a privilege to be out here practicing when it is hot as hell, when school's winding down,
Mm-hmm.
like during your exams, like to be out with this group, like this is special. And we only have 3 weeks, 2 weeks, two practices, like like this is
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um,
Such a
and I
special
think,
experience.
and I certainly, because I feel like at times, like I did not always take that step. I was trying to be in their ears about that, like the whole lead up to HSNI. And when we were there, I think like, Mike said, several times to just like reminded everyone to just take a step back and appreciate like that this program is at nationals. Like when we were talking to other coaches, we would just talk about how excited we were to be there and to have this program here after, so many years of hard work. We played Garfield's from Seattle in our pool, who ended up going to semis. We really should have won that game. We were up like 11-9 and we lost 12-11 or something.
Dang.
Um,
Yeah, that is pretty classic high school
but
ultimate.
yeah,
the 3-point lead, man.
most dangerous lead in high school ultimate. Yeah, but we played and like their coaches, like I don't remember his last name, but his name's Jude. He's like the director of Disc NW or whatever,
Right.
and so like you just like get to like even as a coach, like I found myself like taking a step back and being like, wow, like we got our money's worth, right? Like we got to play teams from Seattle, Minnesota, I think like 2 from California, Utah or something.
My goodness.
Like,
What a
that
slate.
yeah, like for Jordan High School from Durham, North Carolina, like who spent 4 years building this program into something that could like go, like that's what we got to do. And I think, by the end, like we were kind of lowish on numbers. Like we were missing one of our seniors who stayed for graduation. Her sister, who is also like incredibly talented, like left after day one, to like go be there for grad. So like we were like losing numbers. Like we did not have our full squad that we would have liked. And I think if we had, we probably would have done better than ninth. But ninth is still obviously like an incredible accomplishment for your first time at that kind of tournament in a 16-team tournament. But I think like as our day wound down, like it was also just heinous weather, like and like awful fields.
Yeah,
like it was day 2.
So I'm glad you brought this up because so we had aspirations to go to HSNI, and I wish that we had, but when I looked at the conditions, I was like, I don't know if this is the experience that we would have thought it was going to be. Like,
I think that's totally valid. I mean,
I don't know, man.
I'm hearing stories of how UltiWorld is sending people to the Home Depot a mile away to get these like 40-pound bags of dirt that they're having to shove in holes on the showcase field. I'm hearing that the UltiWorld Discord's blowing up with how like mad people are about how the field complex looks compared to how it looked when they like made this decision. But I think also like to your point about the sort of experiences it creates, like we're playing games in this mud pit. We're playing our placement games at nationals, like together for the last time, like and it's everyone is so dirty. But like you can't like
that's something they're gonna remember.
Yeah, that's the
remember.
lasting image of the season for me.
That's 16 D3 nationals right there.
Yeah,
like none of us forget it. Like I got my white jersey in my closet over there that's covered. That is just like it has never washed out. The amount of mud on that jersey, it will remain that way for the remainder of my existence.
Yeah, and for some of these girls, like their like last moments on this team that they helped build, like they're gonna remember it being like caked in mud, like in a huddle, like talking about what the program means to them and like what it meant just to like just to be at HSNI, just to be there. Just to be there. And I think like once, kind of going back a little bit, but like once the bid was secured and once like we knew we had the numbers to go to HSNI, I think like it was kind of just, it was much smoother sailing than it was prior. Like, once you have accomplished that goal, like I'm sure, we were excited and we were hopeful to like maybe make a run like we wanted to, right? But when we knew we didn't have the full group and when we knew, I don't think anybody had any sort of unfounded expectations about the type of competition we would be playing. Like we knew it would be difficult.
Right. You've already seen those teams.
We've seen some of them. Yeah. And even when we felt like we should have beaten some of those teams, we knew that the teams that were going to be there were going to be even better than who we would play, right? We knew that probably every game would be more difficult than our most difficult game at Eula,
Right.
which we had lost. So I think like going in there, we played a tight pre-quarter, which I think was disappointing to lose, definitely winnable. But, we bounced back and we won our last two games and we held our seed. And you can't ask for much more than that
Yeah.
at like a national
Yeah.
tournament. You go in, you hold seed.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're the last seed and you lost all your games, right? Like you go in.
Right. And there's always gonna be when you are a lower seed. There's always gonna be that I mean, that's something that I really hope happens for Athens down the road is to come in. Okay, like we are a new team at this place. Maybe we're not the highest seed, but let's believe that we can get to quarters. Let's believe that we can get to semis. Because when we went into Eula, that was my attitude. Was like, okay, I also tempered with a healthy degree of when we were at Queen City. I was River's Edge, and there was another team that Jackson Reed was there, and Jackson Reed blew out all the Triangle teams. We never played them, but I was like using Queen City as kind of my gauge of like, okay, how realistic is HSNI for us? When I saw Jackson Reed play, I was like, that's going to be a long climb, buddy. And so, but to have that kernel of like almost delusional self-belief is a special thing. And the if you want a great example of this, go look at the Ring of Fire team for 2016 that was seeded 13, had a terrible regular season, lost to Turbine at sectionals, right? That whole situation. I it was very special run by that group, but like gets to semis, plays Revolver, is on Universe Point against Revolver, had a lead in that game, right? Like those kinds of experiences, if you can produce those at the college or high school level, or even earlier than those top levels of club, are so special, and it speaks to what the game's all about, what the sport's all about.
Yeah.